Welcome to Forbidden Planet TV. I'm Andrew Sumner, and I'm privileged to be joined by my old mate, Mark Millar. How are you, mate?
I'm doing good. Nice to see you again, Andy.
Great to see you. And of course, we are speaking just as you have some immense news to share with us about Jupiter's Legacy on Netflix.
Yeah, it's really exciting. We come in #1 in the world, the most watched television show in the world, day one, then again day two, again day three, now day four. It's absolutely bonkers, so it's a kind of funny feeling, because there's people in Chile or there's people in Russia or whatever, where it's sitting at #1 and all these people writing to me in languages I don't understand, but Google Translate comes in very handy. But it's been a brilliant few days. When I'm supposed to be doing some downtime now, I've got some time off, I'm just sitting on Twitter reading all these responses, which is awesome. It's great.
Yeah, mate. And I know how long you've been working, and not just on the books and whatnot, but I know how long you've been working on this show. And when we last chatted almost like a year ago, you were deep into the production of this. So to have your baby get birthed in this way, but then to be greeted with the viewing figures that it's got, that's just got to feel so good, man.
Well, I'd have been happy with #3, like #1 is awesome, so I must admit it is better. But that's just really nice. And the Netflix PR guys are amazing. They did such a great job launching this thing, So what's weird though is that we're doing like 10 different things at once. So that's kind of one plate spinning over there, and then we're looking at the other 9 plates just now doing other things and everything. So it was just a relief. We finished working on this, 6 weeks ago? So it's actually nice to look back, think, okay, that's worked out. Then we're focusing on the other stuff now.
Yeah, so I've only watched episode 1 thus far because my thing is that my thing is that I always watch the Netflix kind of hero shows with my kids, right? Who are both adults, but we really enjoyed it, mate. And what really struck me, I think somebody is maybe giving one of the performances of his career is Josh Duhamel.
He's amazing.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
Episode 3 and 4, he's unbelievable, and he's so great.
Yeah, I mean, but he's just. I thought from a looks perspective, he's one of those guys who has kind of aged into his look spectacularally well. He's always looked great from day one of his career, but he looks great now with that kind of elder statesman vibe he's got. But the way you've got him, portraying different iterations of himself, he looks like you'd almost have to build him if he didn't exist already, if that makes sense.
Well, it's funny because I remember when Stephen DeKnight was talking and says about casting, and he was like, God, this is really hard. He said, because you've got to get somebody who's good looking enough and big enough to play a superhero, because you can't get a small guy to wear a cape. It looks weird. If you're under 6'2", a cape doesn't quite work, just because you see the length of someone when they're wearing a long garment like that. But you also need somebody who's got the acting chops. This isn't one of those cookie cutter things, that he's got to show some real range here. So we were batting names back and forth for ages, and then whenever he came in, perfect. Nobody else could have done this, I think.
Yeah, no, he's really selling it, and I think to be able to be so impressive in all those different time zones of the character, I think that's a great thing. That's
the stuff with your daughter, and it's amazing. I mean, I know you haven't seen episode 2 yet, but there's a brilliant scene where the two of them are just sitting at a breakfast table, and it's like the best American indie movie. It's really, really cool. It's just so human. I mean, that dinner table scene is also great in the first episode, isn't it? I mean, that was the first scene I showed all my pals. Anytime my pals were popping by, I'd be like, right, okay. And weirdly, I think they were expecting to see a big fight or something. I said, no, watch this dinner table scene. It's great. And it introduces all the characters so nicely as well. It's a crack.
Well, that to me is an analogy for the glorious moments actually in a comic book, of which you have written many, mates. I mean, it's like when we go back to whether it's Jupiter's Legacy, the books themselves, or go back to your work on the Ultimates, I'll bet that the scenes that people quote back to, it's never the action stuff. It's always the conversations, isn't it? Because that's when you're a fan. That's the stuff that really speaks to you.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Yeah. I hadn't even thought about that, but that's true. I mean, or just a funny line or something. They always remember a funny line. And it's funny because movies, I think, don't do enough funny lines anymore. Because when I used to come to Star Wars or Superman or something, the stuff that my pals and I would quote to each other, or Indiana Jones, you'd always quote the funny line. You hardly ever get that now, don't you? We need more funny lines. They used to bring in comedians, I heard, to come up with like a good one-liner.
Yeah.
And that's what people take away from the film, isn't it? You remember every funny line in Star Wars, don't you? From being a kid.
That's absolutely right. I mean, Schwarzenegger used to have a very well-known comedian, Dennis Miller, actually, on his payroll to come up with all those one-liners you see in all those, all those 80s like Schwarzenegger films. Yeah. And it makes sense. I mean, a film that you and I have a mutual love of is the original Superman the movie, and of course that's chock full of like asides and humorous lines.
Yeah, amazing. And that's the bit you remember, isn't it? You know, it was Richard Donner said that to me, not to name drop, but I had lunch with Richard.
Although, as name drops go, that is a brilliant one, mate.
But it was a while back. It was in 2008. Once it had just come out, and I was lucky enough to get a 2-hour lunch with Richard Donner. And Donner said that to me. He said, "Always remember the funny, kids." He says, even when the thing is at its darkest, throw in a funny line, and it makes people laugh for a second, and then it makes the dark stuff even darker, you know. And it was really smart. I mean, Donner's a genius, isn't he? He knows what he's doing.
Oh yeah, man, he's something else. I mean, all of the present superhero film in movies really owes a lot to him. And even though like the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, right, that owes so much to Richard Donner, because it's
everyone does,
because that's essentially what Lethal Weapon with capes on and whatnot, he's so important to the pop culture DNA of what we all now readily consume. He's right there in the birthing pool of it all, really.
Including like the first big Marvel movie was X-Men, wasn't it? I know Blade actually was too, but people sort of recognize X-Men as being the first one because it's so overtly a comic book film. But Donner was producing it, so I mean he had that realistic hand in there. But I will say I do think it's a great crime of humanity that nobody recognizes Blade as the first Marvel film, because I love that film. It's so great. Blade 2 is even better, but Blade 1 I just absolutely love. It's brilliant.
Once again, you and I are on the same page. I love that movie for all the reasons you've said. And I was, as many comic book fans were at the time, comic book fans of a certain age, I was super aware of the fact that what you're actually seeing was a really effective and loyal interpretation of a comic book that I love without sacrificing any of what made it great. I
went to see it with my pals, and my pals said to me, is there really an action hero called Eric? Eric's the most unlikely. Like Blade sounds so much cooler, doesn't it? You can see why he calls himself Blade, like Eric.
Yeah, you really can. I mean, just to round out the Donner love, what I love about Donner, of course, is the answer to the connective question. What connects Superman and the X-Men and the banana splits? And that alone is just a wonderful career right there without any of the rest of it.
And it all great, all absolutely brilliant as well. It's funny, I remember as a kid, when you start to sort of become aware of credits, you start to notice people you like have done a few things that you like. And you're like, oh, that's why I like this. It's the same guys who did this. And I remember seeing Donner's name at the back of a Banana Splits. And I was so obsessed with Superman. I remember I had a pad where I'd drawn the crew of Superman, so Pierre Spengler, like the producer, I had a picture of him and everything, And I was so into Donner, I remember just reading everything I could about him and then seeing him on the credits of Banana Splits. That blew my mind. It's like finding out Ian Fleming had done Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
Yes, yeah. It is, mate, it's exactly that. It's exactly that. Now, anybody who's watching this conversation can buy the beautiful Netflix editions of Jupiter's Legacy, of the collected editions, from the links attached to this conversation, and can also pre-order Jupiter's Legacy Requiem, which joins us very soon, from the links attached to this conversation. But looking back on Jupiter's Legacy, now that it's had its Netflix introduction, it's having the success it's having on the screen. When you look back at the whole project, what's the thing that you're proudest of, Mark?
I think doing something so big, because I don't mean big in terms of popularity. I mean something so vast in terms of story. Like the final volume that I'm doing just now, Jupiter's Legacy Requiem, it's 350 pages long. It's 12 issues, 3 of which are double-sized. And you know me, I'm like a lazy bugger, right? Like I like to just sit about. I don't like to do anything too long. My runs are like 6 issues, Old Man Logan, Civil War, all these things. I don't do things that are too long, but this is 12 issues and 10 issues in total. So it's for me, this is vast. And it's 6 big volumes it's going to be in total. So I kind of like having one of those magnum opus things. Other writers do this, but I never do. But I like the fact there's going to be 6 big volumes on my shelves here, And I'm really happy with how they've turned out. And I couldn't have better partners working on them. For Frank Whiteley and I to have started it. And then have guys like Wilfredo Torres and Chris Sprouse, who did some issues as well, on the previous storyline. And the future storyline has been done by Tommy Lee Edwards, who's an absolute genius.
That guy's a genius. I love his work. I really love his work.
Every artist in the world loves Tommy Lee Edwards.
Yeah, yeah, and such a lovely person as well. You know, he's a great bloke, isn't he?
He's just like a big teddy bear, isn't he? You know,
yeah, he is. Yeah,
You just want to cuddle him.
Yeah, no, him and Tim Bradstreet, are two guys that, you know, if you're going to get into a fight in a bar in Texas, you'll be in that bar in Texas with Tommy Lee Edwards and Tim Bradstreet. I reckon.
You can always me as well. Just phone me if you need any help.
Of course, mate. Yeah, well, beyond the shadow of a doubt. And when you look, so what are you proudest in terms of, without giving any spoilers away for people who haven't, like myself, who haven't watched all of the show yet? What are you proudest of in terms of the adaptation and what we're seeing on screen?
What I love is it's kind of confidence. You know, it's quite a thoughtful program. You know, like normally these things are like somebody gets powers, a supervillain emerges, there's a big fight, beaten, and then you defeat the supervillain in the third act. You know, it's like that's the formula generally for these things. And this is kind of mad. I mean, Stephen DeKnight looked at the whole property and he was like, let's slow this down and have some fun with it and really go deep on it, you know? So like, as you know, from the first episode, there's this island that you maybe have seen from the book that they're heading towards. That was like a short sequence, maybe in total 15 pages over a couple of issues in the book, but it's actually 2.5 hours of television. And he's done a kind of, Stephen came up with this idea of doing it like Close Encounters, like Sir Richard Dreyfuss's character, as a guy having a nervous breakdown and going on this journey, and he's going to find this island that doesn't exist, and he's trying to get his friends to come with him. And it really works. It's actually really epic. And that's what I love about the TV show, that I mean, what I did in 2 issues of the comic, they've done in like 8 episodes. So it's, I think, 6.5 hours worth of television, but it feels quite immense, and it's got a grandeur that I really like, you know. So, you know, the storyline from here goes a bit more whiz bang, you know, you've got a lot more action and lots of people getting killed and everything. It goes a bit more Game of Thrones. But I love this thoughtful first season. It feels very grown up. Like, see my normie friends, right, like in family, like the pals who don't read comics and all that kind of stuff. They're loving it, right? They're like, they just get it. It feels kind of like something they would watch. And I kind of like that, you know. They were, I had no idea you did stuff that was this sophisticated. And I was like, this is Stephen DeKnight's added the sophistication.
And he is such a great showrunner as well. I mean, his pedigree is brilliant. You know, it must have been so exciting to get him on board and for him to be the guy that you're working with.
It was literally my first call. You know, they said to me, the exec that was running this thing said to me when we first sold the company, "Who would you like for this?" And I said, "Well, I've just seen Daredevil season 1.
Which is impeccable, yeah. By the way,
it's easily the best Marvel TV show, like easily.
Yeah.
And I said, "Can we get him?" And they called me 2 days later and said, "We got him." It's great, you know. So I was really delighted. Great.
Oh, mate. So I couldn't agree more, and it gives me a lot of pleasure to hear that. And let's talk for a second about the extended like Millarverse and what's coming next. Have you got any juicy Mark Millar bombs you can drop on me in the conversation, mate?
Well, on the Netflix side of things, actually, I wrote a blog the other day on Netflix's website, and they asked me to just detail all the things we're doing together, you know, from within the company. So next thing that will be out is an anime thing called Super Crooks, which actually ties into Jupiter's Legacy. Jupiter's Legacy is about the heroes. Super Crooks is about what it's like to be a supervillain. So it's a big kind of heist thing, you know, with supervillains. And it's been done by Studio Bones in Japan. They're absolutely amazing. So it's anime, you know, which is an unusual choice, but it actually is so cool. I've watched the first 5 episodes and they look absolutely amazing. They're still in Japanese. So slightly confusing for me at the moment, you know, but I'm picking it up.
That's going to be amazing.
Oh, it really looks awesome. It looks awesome. In fact, you know what? I've got it on my wife's phone. So like, if we meet in the pub soon as planned, I'll show you the first episode.
I'm all over that.
This is like the stars aligning for us.
I'm going to pause the mighty Mark Millar right there. Mark, as usual, had a lot of interesting things to say. So we're going to run the second half of this conversation in another episode of Forbidden Planet TV coming very soon. Come back and check it out. Check out the links attached to this conversation for Jupiter's Legacy Collected Editions and for Jupiter's Legacy Requiem Issue 1, all available for pre-order and order from Forbidden Planet. And I'll see you back here soon. Take care. If you're enjoying watching Forbidden Planet TV and you're enjoying watching us talk to the world's most interesting and accomplished filmmakers, authors, artists, musicians, creators, subscribe right here. See you soon.